Hey, good day, everybody, wherever you're at. I'm gonna make this real quick because I was talking with a friend of mine. We both went to school together, and we both studied history together. And she was asking how to disassociate from the news because it's as historians, it's very disconcerting for us to watch the news, hear the rhetoric that is being spewed. Like, for instance, let's make Canada the 51st state. It's no longer going to be called the Gulf of Mexico, but the Gulf of America. Let's take back the Panama Canal. Let's buy Greenland. And we historians have been saying for a while now that we're going to repeat the 1930s, and here we are. So I say all this because when I came across her thing talking about how to disassociate from the news, I hit her up and I was like, our history brains will not let us do that. Our history brains will not let us just turn it off. You're not going to be able to turn it off. And we got talking about co-workers of mine, fellow and former, current, I think actually from the times when I would talk to a lot of these people, they're all out now. So past soldiers, so veterans that I've worked with, and some of the ideological beliefs that they held, right? And it's very interesting because, again, historians. So I look at things from a lens of this happened in the past. Now, I'm also an intel person nowadays. So I also look at things as this happened in the past. This led up to those events. And now you see this happen, right? And looking at all the geopolitical things that are going on in the world right now, and especially with this past week, I'm looking at this from the same lens that she's looking at this, and she's saying, this looks very familiar to the Munich Agreement, and this looks very familiar to the invasion of the Sudetenland. That's scary. Newsflash, wake up, right? And she wants to know how to disassociate from that because it's hard for her to understand how people are for this. And this isn't like, me like hating on her or anything like that. I actually hold her in very high regard because my brain as well is saying, how did we get here? Here are the events that led up to this. And how are people okay with this? Right now, it's all over the news. And I get that because of the incoming administration, people are just instantly just like whatever and fed up to it. Because, he's going to say whatever he's going to say. He's going to tweet whatever he's going to tweet. He's going to post whatever he's going to post on Truth. Like, I get it. Right. And I get that people are also tired. And this isn't me hating on the current or the incoming administration. Nope. This is me just trying to make sense of the rhetoric that is being spewed because it harkens back to the 1930s, and it's very hard to understand how we got here. It's very hard to see where we are going. And I will say that for me personally, and I was talking to her, again, talking about the guys that I worked with back when only men were allowed in the infantry. And a lot of them used to be very anti-Russia. And now you see a lot of them are very pro-Russia. In fact, a lot of them are very, let's just get Russia, the US, and China together as buddies and then carve up the world, because in their mind, that makes sense, right? You have the three biggest superpowers, and if we can get along, then the world will get along. That's not how it works, because newsflash, don't know if you notice, but Putin, not a good guy. Xi Jinping, also not a good guy. And also America, we're a consumer nation. We want, right? So what does that mean in terms of government? Geopolitics here. It means that Russia is going to continue to take back the land that they see as theirs from the days of the Iron Curtain, Soviet Union, all of that, right? China, they think in the terms of 100 years, the 100-year strategy. So we call it in the military, the Great Powers Competition, GPC. GPC says there can only be one, like Highlander, right? And right now, who's number one? Well, that's us, or at least that's the way we view it here in America. So the GPC says there can only be one. So this alliance that we want to get together, this global alliance with Russia and China, it's never going to work because Russia is going to say, well, I want to be the boss. And China thinks in a 100-year strategy and says, well, right now we'll make it appear that we're weak. That's what they did in the 80s. We'll make it appear that, we need help and that we want to get to a certain level. That's what they did in the 90s. And then we're going to start buying up everything because now everybody needs us because we have, we put our workers at a lower pay scale than everybody else. So all the manufacturing and everything, and that's why you see everything made in China, right? Now, China is on the same level. They are peer-to-peer adversaries, right? Near-peer adversaries. That's what we call it in the military. Near-peer adversaries. Same with Russia, near-peer adversary. Although I will say that, in my opinion, Russia is not a near-peer adversary because they couldn't even take out Ukraine, and they're still there. So I would say that they're actually not a near-peer adversary. I get it because they have nukes. They are. But I will say this, China, near-peer adversary. And China isn't even thinking about next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. No, they're thinking about moves that they can make in 2050, 2060, 2070, right? That's their mentality. Russia's mentality is we have to be strong at all costs and we will endure, right? US's mentality is goldfish. Just going to plain right out say it, goldfish. So that being said, when I was talking to her about this, and she was like, well, do the guys that you worked with, do they not see that? And I was like, no, they don't. And I don't know why they don't see that. I also don't know why a lot of Americans in general want to disassociate from what is going on in the world. You see, I told her that it is of my opinion that the reason why us, United States, only ever thinks about ourselves is because, one, we're such a big country. Two, we're isolated. We have two oceans, east and west, right? Atlantic, Pacific, and the Gulf of Mexico, right? Not America, Gulf of Mexico, right? So we are isolated. The only countries we have near us is Mexico and Canada, right? And so when you think about it that way, a lot of Americans don't associate with what is going on in Europe or Africa or the Middle East or Asia or Oceania, right? We don't think like that. Or South America. We don't think like that. It does not compute with us. And you are also seeing it in countries like United Kingdom because they are an island nation off the coast of Europe. And now that they are no longer a part of the EU, they don't think about the ramifications that will happen to the EU. And British mentality is also very British centric. So, and that's probably why the US is very American centric as well, because, offspring of British imperialism. That's a thought for a later day. But when you think about the American mentality, it's very consumeristic. We just want to be entertained. We just want our sports. We want our clothes. We want our music. We want our entertainment. Just entertain us. Like Maximus said in Gladiator, are you not entertained? Right? That is the American mindset. On a basic level, we want entertainment. We don't want to care about what is going on outside of our borders as a whole. I'm not saying that this is every American. I'm just saying most Americans, because most Americans are not that informed onto what is going on in the world. The same can be said, even though Brits travel all over the globe. I've never taken an international trip or when I was stationed overseas, not met a Brit in whatever random country that I was in. Just never. They travel a lot. But a lot of British people right now are very much just focused on Britain, Great Britain, United Kingdom, right? The UK. And they don't really necessarily want to be concerned with what is going on in the rest of the world. They're tired. Whereas Americans, we just want to be entertained and we don't want to have to deal with everything else. We have too much stuff going on here at home. And I told her that, one of the problems is the fact that with Americans, we are just conditioned to only think about ourselves and how we can get ours and, what's in it for us. With the exception of Australia and New Zealand, all these other countries that border, the likes of China. Like, for instance, take South Korea and Japan. Now, South Korea and Japan historically do not have great relationships with each other. They put up with each other. They're cordial with each other. They're cool now, right? They're good now. They are allies. But historically speaking, what Japan did to Korea during World War II, horrific. And if you go back in history, Japan's invaded Korea, Korea's tried to invade Japan, all this other stuff. Like, I'm talking like the feudal samurai era, way back, 1500s and whatnot, right? Japan and Korea historically do not have great relations. What you're seeing now, though, because of China, Japan and South Korea are boosting military expenditure, boosting military cooperation, all in preparation for China, right? Solidifying ties with the Philippines and whatnot, all of that. Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, all the island countries there. Closer ties with each other due to China. Go over to Europe, mainland Europe. NATO's getting stronger. The EU is getting stronger. You have President Macron continuously propositioning to start an EU military, a sort of NATO without the US in it, right? All because of Russia and what they're doing in Ukraine. And so she had mentioned, she's like, do you think it's because these countries, they border these other, powerhouse giants? And so those people, they look back to their elders, or they have learned from their older generations about the struggle, about war, about all of these things and how it affected their countries. And I was like, absolutely 100%. And that's when I mentioned these other countries and their military relations getting stronger with each other, right? Again, we are isolated. The UK is sort of isolated. I get it. It's just the strait there between them and Europe, but they have isolated themselves with Brexit. And, they were under a conservative regime, or a conservative, parliament for such a long time, that you're seeing all these. And I told her, the United States has had its right-wing shifts. And when you see countries that hearken to isolationism, right, they sow that little seed of, well, we have to take care of us first, right? America first, or UK first. When you start seeing those seeds being sown, take care of us, right? Who cares about them? We need to focus on us. That's when you start seeing this shift away from allies, right? And it starts to sow in this mentality that we don't need them, right? We don't need them. We'll be fine by ourselves. But these other countries like Europe, Asia, South America, that have to deal with these other giants around them, they remember the struggles and they remember war. And that is why you're seeing their allied partnerships get better. So when you hear the rhetoric of, oh my goodness, let's just take the Panama Canal back. Let's just make Canada the 51st state. Let's, buy Greenland. When you hear that rhetoric and it harkens back to 1930s, the rest of the world remembers. We don't, because it didn't really affect us besides sending soldiers off to war. But when you say that you're not above using economic coercion or military strength to acquire sovereign bits of land, that's scary, right? And it's also important. So for the people out there that say that it doesn't affect me, it does affect you, because guess what happens if Panama decides they no longer want to accept U.S. ships going through the Panama Canal? Trade gets longer, because now you have to go around Argentina and in between Antarctica. And that's going to hurt trade. Threatening to annex Canada. Look up what Canadians did in World War I. All I'm going to leave you with is this: trench warfare, food cans, baseball bats and other things to bludgeon people with, and grenades in food cans. There's a reason why Geneva Convention gets edited every time Canada enters the chat. And then don't piss off Denmark with trying to buy Greenland, which we had previously tried to do under incoming administration before, or at least the rhetoric was the same, right? And what is that going to do if you piss off an EU member and then they decide to start pushing for, less trade with America. You see, other countries love to play the geopolitical game. They have the leverage. We think we have leverage, but they actually have the leverage, because all they have to do is then turn to the Great Bear, aka Russia, or China. And China's more than happy to be like, yeah, here, take our money. Now you owe us, right? So when you hear this rhetoric, just be mindful of what the ramifications that come of it, because don't switch your brain off. You cannot switch your brain off, because if you do, you're screwed. We will be screwed as a country if we think that this is okay. So let's not repeat history. That is your history lesson for today. Have a good one. Bye.